Something just happened inside Washington that should scare every American paying attention to AI, the military, and government power. Not a foreign attack, not a cyber breach, a president. Overnight, Donald Trump quietly moved to blacklist one of the safest AI companies in the country, Anthropic, the very company whose model was trusted inside sensitive defense systems. Why? Because they refused two things: mass surveillance on Americans and AI weapons that can kill without a human pressing the button. So instead of negotiating, Trump's Pentagon reportedly labeled them a supply chain risk, ordered agencies to rip out their tech, and threatened contractors who still work with them. Then almost immediately, OpenAI stepped in to take the contract. Same job, same military, very different treatment. If that sounds less like national security and more like punishment for refusing blind loyalty, you're starting to see the problem. Here's where it gets even more concerning. Anthropic didn't just say no lightly. They drew a line in the sand. They said, "We will not let our AI, Claude, be used to spy on Americans. We will not let it make autonomous killing decisions. There must always be a human in control." Those are not radical demands. Those are guardrails that almost every AI safety expert would call common sense. But according to multiple reports, the Trump administration and Pete Hegseth called this unacceptable, labeling the company a threat to national security. The dispute centered on a lawful purpose clause. In government contracts, that clause is supposed to define how AI can be used. Anthropic wanted to write it explicitly to protect Americans and troops from misuse. The administration wanted it vaguely defined so they could decide unilaterally what counted as lawful. Negotiations broke down. Anthropic refused to compromise on mass surveillance and autonomous weapons. The Trump administration's response? Ban federal use, declare the company a supply chain risk, and pressure all contractors connected to Anthropic to cut ties, even giants like Amazon, Google, and NVIDIA. This isn't just bureaucracy. This is an unprecedented move where a U.S. president threatens domestic companies for adhering to their own safety rules. And it's happening in real time, right under our noses. Meanwhile, the AI world is watching, wondering, if Anthropic can be punished for ethical limits, who else is next? And how much control does the government really want over AI, over private companies, over what these systems do, and over who lives and dies on the battlefield? This isn't speculation, it's happening now. And here's where the Trump administration makes its move unmistakably clear. Donald Trump did not just reject Anthropic's terms, he went nuclear. In a series of directives, federal agencies were told to immediately cease all use of Anthropic's Claude AI, with only a 6-month window to phase it out. No exceptions, no compromises. Then came the supply chain risk designation. Usually that label is reserved for foreign adversaries. Think China or Russia, not domestic tech companies. Yet Anthropic, a US-based AI startup, was suddenly painted as a threat to national security. Any company still doing business with Anthropic, Google, Amazon, NVIDIA, even Microsoft, could now lose their government contracts or be deemed part of the same risk. Trump and Pete Hegseth framed it as a patriotic duty. In his own words, Anthropic had put ideology above the lives of American troops and tried to strong-arm the U.S. military into submission. The language was calculated, almost theatrical, presenting the government as the defender of American lives while casting the company as a radical leftist actor. The administration's stance boiled down to this: lawful purpose means whatever we say it means. Autonomy? No problem. Mass surveillance? Fine. Ethical objections from the AI company? Irrelevant. Compliance or punishment? That was the only choice. Industry experts immediately sounded alarms. A top Pentagon consultant told reporters that using domestic companies as leverage for ideological control risks chilling innovation. Future AI startups may now face the choice: abandon ethical safeguards or lose access to government contracts. The ripple effect could impact every corner of the AI ecosystem, from defense contractors to cloud providers and chip manufacturers. At the same time, the move sent a signal to the public. The Trump administration intends full control over AI deployment, regardless of prior agreements, safety protocols, or ethical commitments. Anthropic's refusal was no longer a business disagreement. It had become a political and moral battle, with the president at the center, defining what is patriotic, lawful, and acceptable. And while the world watches, the stakes could not be higher. Lives of service members, civil liberties, and the future of AI governance all hang in the balance. Almost immediately after the Anthropic fallout, OpenAI stepped into the breach. Same Pentagon, same military systems, same potential for AI deployment in sensitive defense networks. Yet the treatment was completely different. OpenAI reportedly negotiated an agreement that mirrored exactly the safeguards Anthropic had requested: no autonomous weapons and no mass domestic surveillance. But here's the catch. According to OpenAI statements, these safeguards are enforced not through explicit contractual language, but through a trust us approach. Whereas Anthropic insisted the government accept terms of service that legally bound them to respect those guardrails, OpenAI appears to have relied on good faith assurances from the Trump administration that these limits would be honored. This raises an obvious question. Why was Anthropic punished for demanding enforceable ethical protections, while OpenAI, essentially asking for the same outcome, was rewarded? Some analysts suggest the difference lies in political alignment. OpenAI executives, including CEO Sam Altman, were among the largest donors to Trump's campaigns. Anthropic, by contrast, remained independent, unwilling to compromise its internal principles for access. The optics are striking. A domestic company refuses to bend to government demands and is labeled a supply chain risk. Another company follows the same safety principles, but relies on informal assurances and receives the contract. The message is clear. Compliance with political expectations matters more than ethical guardrails. This inconsistency has sent shockwaves across Silicon Valley. Engineers, executives, and investors are asking, if ethical red lines are grounds for punishment, what precedent is being set for AI development in the US? And how many future AI firms will now be forced to choose between innovation, ethics, and government access? Meanwhile, OpenAI has publicly celebrated the deal as a victory for AI safety, emphasizing that the Pentagon agreed to uphold the principles Anthropic demanded. Critics argue, however, that without enforceable language, this victory is precarious, a paper shield that could be discarded at the government's discretion. In short, the Trump administration just redrew the rules of engagement for AI in America. It's no longer a debate about technology. It's about loyalty, leverage, and control. And the consequences for refusing to play the game can be devastating. As the news spread, social media erupted. Tens of thousands of Americans, including Trump supporters, began questioning the administration's approach. Comments ranged from disbelief to outright anger. "So you support mass surveillance, Donald? Is that what you're saying?" wrote one user. Another, "You banned Anthropic for saying no to autonomous killing? That's insane." Some posts highlighted that Anthropic's stance wasn't woke or ideological. It was practical and safety-driven, protecting both civilians and troops. Platforms lit up with debates over AI ethics, government overreach, and constitutional rights. Many pointed out the irony. Trump had previously championed limits on big tech, yet here the government was forcing a company to surrender its ethical guardrails or face obliteration. Even ordinary investors weighed in. People worried that the message was clear. No company that defends ethical AI practices would be safe under government contracts, potentially driving innovators and startups out of the US market. At the same time, memes, threads, and comment chains mocked the administration's heavy-handed approach. "Bro, Anthropic said they wouldn't spy on US citizens. Is the baby done crying yet?" read one viral post, lampooning the tone of official statements. The public's concern isn't just about AI, it's about precedent. If refusing to compromise ethical safeguards can label a US company a national security risk, what stops similar actions in other industries? What stops the government from dictating corporate morality on every emerging technology? The reaction made one thing clear. Americans, across political lines, want guardrails on AI. They want safety, accountability, and human oversight, not blind obedience to an administration wielding technology as a tool of power. And in this public arena, the Trump administration's aggressive messaging only amplified scrutiny and criticism, turning what may have been a technical disagreement into a national controversy. The fallout from this showdown isn't just political, it's financial and strategic, and the ripple effects are hitting some of the biggest names in tech. Think about it. Amazon, Google, Nvidia, even Microsoft, all of whom have invested heavily in Anthropic or provide critical infrastructure for Claude. Now, under the Trump administration's orders, these companies are forced to choose between losing government contracts or severing ties with a key AI partner. That's not just pressure, it's what some analysts call corporate coercion at the national level. Investors are watching closely. Venture capitalists and startups are questioning the viability of US-based AI development if ethical guardrails can be punished, and political alignment becomes the decisive factor for government access. Some insiders warn that this could chill innovation, driving cutting-edge AI research overseas or into jurisdictions with less restrictive political interference. And it gets more complicated. Claude is embedded in defense networks, meaning the phase-out process isn't simple. It involves technical risk, continuity planning, and security audits. Every day a transition drags on, the Pentagon loses efficiency, while companies face potential legal exposure and reputational fallout. In other words, the Trump administration's move is more than just a headline grab. It's a shockwave through the US AI ecosystem. It threatens not only Anthropic, but every business connected to it. And by extension, it raises fundamental questions about the United States' ability to lead in AI safely and ethically when the government asserts unilateral control over technological compliance. The message to corporate America is unmistakable: obedience or exclusion. Ethical boundaries? Optional. Innovation? Secondary. Political loyalty? Mandatory. In response, Anthropic has made it crystal clear: they are not backing down. CEO Dario Amodei released a statement emphasizing that Anthropic's stance was never about obstructing national security. Their concern was simple: current AI models are not reliable enough for autonomous weapons, and mass domestic surveillance violates fundamental American rights. Anthropic requested that the lawful purpose clause explicitly cover these 2 points, ensuring that their AI cannot be misused against civilians or deployed without human oversight. They insisted on transparency and enforceable safeguards, not ideology, not politics, but safety and ethics. Every effort was made in good faith to reach an agreement with the Department of Defense, Amodei said. Aside from these 2 narrow exceptions, our AI has supported legitimate defense missions without interruption. Our goal has always been to serve national security responsibly, with full respect for human life and civil liberties. The company framed the administration's actions as a misrepresentation of intentions. Rather than acknowledging a request for reasonable safety protocols, Anthropic was portrayed as radical, uncooperative, and even dangerous. In short, Anthropic's message is firm. We prioritize guardrails over compliance with orders that undermine safety and rights. They stand by their AI, their principles, and their refusal to allow autonomous killing or mass surveillance, even in the face of intense government pressure. Meanwhile, OpenAI has taken a very different path. CEO Sam Altman released a statement last night highlighting the historic agreement reached with the Department of Defense, or as the Pentagon prefers, the Department of War. Altman emphasized that the deal incorporates the core safety principles that Anthropic fought to enforce: no mass domestic surveillance, and human responsibility for all uses of force, including autonomous weapons systems. He framed it as a partnership built on mutual respect, with technical safeguards to ensure AI models behave as intended. According to OpenAI, the Pentagon not only agreed to these principles in law and policy, but also requested deployment safeguards, including fully controlled cloud environments and monitoring mechanisms. Unlike Anthropic, OpenAI did not insist on binding contractual language. Instead, The company appears to rely on a trust us model, accepting the government's assurances that these limitations will be honored. Altman further suggested that similar terms should be extended to all AI companies, signaling an attempt to standardize AI deployment while avoiding a public confrontation like Anthropic's. Critics argue this creates a precarious situation. The same safeguards that Anthropic demanded as enforceable protections are now entirely reliant on government goodwill, leaving OpenAI's compliance vulnerable to interpretation or political shift. At the end of the day, the contrast is stark. One company punished for insisting on safety, another lauded for trusting the same government to respect those very limits. And in the eyes of many observers, the Trump administration's role is the deciding factor, not AI ethics. Here's the reality nobody's saying loud enough. The Trump administration just redrew the rules for AI in the United States, and it's not pretty. From an investor's perspective, this is alarming. Any startup developing AI now has to ask itself, do we compromise ethical guardrails to access government contracts or risk being labeled a supply chain risk like Anthropic? That kind of pressure chills innovation. US AI leadership, once a global advantage, could now be handed to foreign competitors who operate without these political constraints. And it's not just about ethics. Think about financial exposure. NVIDIA, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, these companies have poured billions into Anthropic and Claude's infrastructure. The government's unilateral punishment of Anthropic puts these investments at risk. Loss of federal contracts, divestment pressure, reputational fallout. All of this could hit the stock market, research budgets, and tech growth. Then there's the bigger picture: autonomous killing and mass surveillance. Anthropic refused these. The administration wanted them. OpenAI agreed without enforceable language. The implications are chilling. Safety rules, once enforceable, are now subject to political interpretation, not technical standards. That's not governance, that's coercion. Meanwhile, the public sees the contrast. One company punished for ethical prudence, another rewarded for political alignment. It raises serious questions about how the US government will shape emerging technologies, not based on safety or expertise, but on loyalty and control. For Americans, investors, and innovators, the lesson is clear. Guardrails are negotiable, ethics are optional, and political leverage is everything. This is a turning point. The Trump administration has shown that in the realm of AI, obedience trumps responsibility, and dissent can be career-ending or company-ending. In short, the US AI ecosystem just entered uncharted waters, where morality, safety, and innovation may now take a backseat to unilateral governmental authority. The bottom line is this: what's happening with Anthropic, OpenAI, and the Pentagon isn't just a corporate dispute. It's a power play that could define the future of AI, national security, and civil liberties in America. Ethics, safety, and human oversight are under siege. Obedience and political loyalty are being rewarded. The message to every American, every entrepreneur, and every investor is clear. Stand by your principles and risk destruction, or bend the knee and survive. Stay informed, watch closely, and share this story widely, because the decisions being made today will affect all of us tomorrow.